Hey guys, Jehuty here with another Tekken 7 video, and today we're learning how to choose a main. So this is a remaster of sorts of an old video I put out over a year ago. Please don't watch that, it's kind of embarrassing now. And yeah, it's a guide designed for people who are just starting off Tekken and are asking themselves which characters should they pick and which characters should they avoid altogether. And then of course it's also a guide for people who have played a bit of Tekken and have plateaued, so they're not winning online anymore and they're stuck maybe in green ranks, even maybe yellow ranks, and are thinking about starting a new character to counter that. So first things first, in the current state of Tekken, which is 4.11, version 4.11, we have 50 characters. That's a ton of characters, but even without the DLC, which are the top row of characters, you still have a lot of characters to choose from with 35 characters. Now, the first thing we have to talk about, of course, is tier lists. We have to get this out of the way because a lot of people, when they start new fighting games, have the habit of looking at tier lists. And if you don't know what a tier list is, it's just a list which some higher level players of a fighting game put out in hierarchical order, which shows which characters are good and which characters are bad. And the thing with Tekken is that Tekken is a very well balanced game, and anywhere outside of higher level and professional level of play, that doesn't really matter. So for instance, Eddie on a lot of tier lists is put very low, maybe even at the very bottom, but he's going to make your life very miserable for a very long time if you don't know how to deal with him. And every character is quite viable, so even though Eddie is a low tier character, I mean John Ding did some amazing things with him in tournaments before he switched to Julia. So the next thing is, what would happen if you'd ask the community what character to pick? And the community for the most part would tell you, well, just pick the character you like. And in all honesty, this is the truth, because we've just established that the game is quite well balanced and that tier lists don't matter too much. So the only questions you need to ask yourself is the character which you've chosen, or the character which appeals to you, are they difficult to learn? What that means is that do they have certain moves which take time to practice till you can effectively use them? And then of course the question which goes hand in hand with that is, are you willing to put in the time to learn those things? On the flip side of that, you can ask yourself the question, do I want to learn an easier character? So a character which I can learn quite easy, doesn't have like very complicated moves which need a lot of time to learn. And what goes hand in hand with that is that you can sometimes elude yourself with certain characters that you may be better than you actually are. So what do I mean by that? You see, Tekken does a very bad job of explaining its mechanics to you. So what will happen is that certain characters will carry you up, you'll be winning a lot of matches until you stop winning entirely, and you won't really understand why, but the reason is that you've been actually throwing out certain moves which are quite risky, and before nobody knew how to deal with them, and now they know how to deal with them. And unfortunately, some people quit Tekken because of this, because they don't understand why, because up till now everything has been working, why isn't it working anymore? And that's because Tekken is a very complex and also a deep game, and some of these so-called characters, I'm just going to come out and name them, certain characters like Eddie, Xiao Yu, Lily, Lucky Chloe, to name a few, certain characters which the community has dubbed as lab characters, can make you actually think you're better than you actually are. Don't now think that if you're playing certain characters that you have to drop them because I'm saying this. If you like these characters, not because you're necessarily winning with them, but you like them because of the martial arts they practice or their character personality, stick with them. Stick with them. Just keep in mind that you should actually also be informing yourself on how to play the game properly. So of course there are guides online from more reputable Tekken YouTubers which can help you learn the game. I'm working on an introductory one myself coming soon. And the other thing which you can do is that when you're a bit more familiar with the game and your character, you can actually later on pick a second character which is not a lab character. And what will happen is, because you're seeing the other side of the fence, you're actually having a learning experience. So you can incorporate both of those characters, what you've learned from them, into your overall game plan. So that about does it for choosing a main. So what I'm now going to do is I'm now going to demonstrate, show off some 3 more obscure characters which you don't see too often, and why I like them and why you should maybe think about using them. So the first character I'm showing off is Kazumi. A couple of you would be like, well, Jehuty, Kazumi isn't really an obscure character. Well, that may be true for the tournament scene nowadays, but even online today, she's not a character you bump into every day. So what I love about Kazumi is that she has access to some of these Mishima moves, or moves that are similar to those of the Mishima, so moves that Heihachi, Kazuya, and Devil Jin have access to, but her inputs are much simpler. So that means if you like what the Mishimas have, but you find some of the moves off-putting because they're difficult to learn, because they're hard to do, she may be a good alternative to you. So for instance, she has access to the Mishima Flash Punch, the 1-1-2. This move is great because you can keep your opponent at check, at bay, because it's fast and you don't always have to bring out the last hit. And she also has access to her version of the Hell Sweep, so that's a low hit which hits the opponent off of their feet into a mid for a good amount of damage, keeps your opponent guessing, and of course she also has various other moves she can execute out of that Flying Warrior stance, just like how the Mishimas would have other things they could do out of their Wave Dash. So Kazumi also has access to a Tiger that in some moves comes even out as a projectile attack, so something like a Fireball. If you're into that, that's really great for you because it really sets her apart from the rest of the cast. And Kazumi is meant to be played as a poke heavy character. What that means is that she does little quick attacks to chip away at her opponent's life bar consistently over a match. So she's somewhat more of a conservative fighter, not too flashy. And what also you should keep in mind about her is that she has one of the shortest move lists in the game. So if you really want to learn all moves quickly, she is your go-to character for that. So Lee is the character I mainly play, and despite me finding that online he's a bit more prevalent than Kazumi, I still think a lot more people could actually play him because I find this character very interesting. The thing with Lee is that it takes a lot of time for you to practice with him to get consistent with him, especially when you're executing his combos. So yeah, if you're put off by a lot of practice mode, then this is not the character for you. So for instance, you have the back 2 loop, this one which you're seeing here. This takes quite some time to have down, especially if there's lag online. It's going to be difficult to do this consistently. One of the areas Lee excels at is keep out. So what that means is the opponent struggles to approach him because he has great moves like back 4 to keep the opponent at bay, to not move into his space as much. His problem though is that he lacks impactful lows, so lows that are big enough to make the opponent want to duck and block them. Yeah, he has one which is quite good, but he needs to hit on counter hit, and he has another one which also needs to hit on counter hit, which comes out of the stance, out of the hitman stance. However, that also is quite seeable, so it's slow, somebody can react to it and block it. Your only really go-to option in this case is the E slide, and that takes time in practice mode so that you can do it reliably. So just like with Kazumi, Lee is meant to be played in such a way that he chips away at his opponent's health bar with small quick attacks. However, unlike Kazumi, it's not as conservative, so some of these things are more risky than Kazumi's, and I think this makes him more interesting. However, you're entitled to your opinion on that matter. The other thing with Lee is that he has access to a stance, the Hitman stance, from which he can do a couple of things. I find that also quite interesting. And of course, lastly, notably what he's known for is wall carry or wall travel. What I mean by that is he can string together a long combo which will take you all the way to the wall, and then at the wall, of course, also do his combo over there for max damage. So the last character I'm showcasing is Master Raven, or as I like to call her, Maven, and the thing with her is that she's a redesigned / gender swap of Raven from Tekken 5. So she isn't actually that difficult to play as. She doesn't have any moves that take a lot of time in practice mode to learn. However, you'll have to get your brain around the fact that you always have to be putting yourselves in harm's way through the back turn stance. So Master Raven's back turn stance is more risky than other characters' back turn stance, and that is because she actually, when you press back, she actually doesn't get out of the stance like other characters. She actually just moves backwards, so she can't actually block out of the stance. However, lucky for most of us, over the course of the game, she got that stance buffed by receiving a power crush, and of course now an additional throw to mix people up with out of back turn. So the thing with Master Raven is that she's meant to be played quite risky. So you actually want to put yourself in harm's way to bait out attacks from your opponent and then counter them. So for instance, you use an attack, a big attack, and it doesn't touch the opponent. So it misses the opponent and your back is turned towards them. And now they think it's their turn to come and attack you, but in reality it's now your turn to counter them for trying to approach you. In addition to that, Master Raven also has some insane wall travel, so hers may even be better than Lee's in that regard, so keep that in mind. And then she also has access to a crouch dash, so like the Mishimas, and she can also do interesting things out of that to keep the opponent guessing. Anyway, that about sums it up for my video, and thank you for watching it till to the end. With this, I hope it won't be necessary to watch the old version anymore. Anyway, there are more videos on Tekken on my channel, so if you like it, leave a like, consider sharing and subscribing because that helps me the most. And this is your boy Jehuty, and I'll see you on the next one.
Don't forget to subscribe!